Okay, now have we, let's see, volume, assuming volume's okay? Yeah. Yep. Okay, good. Okay, now, first talk of this retreat on Mu, or why Mu. Let's hope that something worth hearing comes up. These guys here are giving a most wonderful teisha. I don't know whether it comes over on Zoom so well, but I'm getting it loud and clear. Thank you, Margie, very, very much. I'm now going to just give me 1 second. I've got to cover my screen. Excuse me. Okay, so why Mu? It's a subject I sort of gave myself that and hoped I'd have something to share that would be helpful. And I still hope that will be the case. But you know, I'm not as sharp neurologically as I have been perhaps in the past. So we'll see how this goes. I've got some wonderful things to share that I'll be reading from. So I think we'll be okay. Now, obviously, this question, why Mu? I mean, behind it, there's obviously the sort of, in a sense, the broader question of why practice. And isn't there even, could we say, behind that, the broader question, in a sense, why live? Why do we live? And practice as a means to reveal more in us about our wholehearted willingness to participate in life, in this world. That in some way, you know, I mean, however you might frame it, in some way, I don't know how else to put it, this world wants us or we wouldn't be here. In some way our existence is happening. We don't know why, and some ideas of the mechanics of it, and you know, the chemicals, the proteins, the DNA, whatever, you know, the algorithms make us. But why is any of this happening? It may not be that maybe one day we'll get to the bottom of it, but before then, until then, prior to then, still there's the fact that we are here. So how do we join the great why, so to speak? I'm just reminded of Shibayama Roshi. He's commenting on one of the early koans that have come down in our tradition. Why does a person of great clarity not lift up their leg? Why does Buddha not lift up her leg? That's the question of the koan. And Shibayama, he delights in this word why. He says, this is the great why that can plunge us into practice ever more deeply. Why does Buddha not lift up her leg? And he says, actually, only when we have once plunged into the abyss of great death do we really understand this why. Why Mu is related to that last remark. And why practice? Of course, it's really in the end, in the beginning, all about suffering. Human suffering, mammalian suffering, reptilian suffering, avian suffering, pescatorial suffering, whatever, amphibial suffering, invertebrate suffering. Maybe with the exception of octopuses and cephalopods, invertebrates, maybe their nervous systems, I don't know whether they're considered to be complex enough to really sort of do suffering, but we do. And probably all the vertebrates plus the honorary invertebrates like the octopuses and squid and cuttlefish, which have very complex nervous systems, surely do. This little brain stem I was referencing earlier, reptilian brain, yeah, it's on high alert, easily triggered. Then you've got the mammal brain above and around that, which we know. Well, there's supported scientific suppositions that mammals share 7 emotions, 7 affective states, from the whale to the vole. Humans and primates along the way, we all share 7 core affective states. Panic, grief, fear, aggression, lust, playfulness, seeking, sort of eager seeking, something else. And then we got our primate brain. And just shorthand here, what does the primate brain, what does it bring to the table that we haven't already got? Connecting. It really, really cares about social connection. And then we've got our somewhat sort of, I was going to say wiser, I don't know about that, but not in my case anyway, but the prefrontal cortex that has a bit more executive control, and the primate, all the reasoning capacity. Interesting, actually, that I saw a graph recently comparing the I don't know what the cognitive capacities of humans and chimpanzees and orangutans, and on 3 main categories like creativity and sort of I don't know, understanding stuff. It's very, very similar, very, very similar. The one area that's dramatically different, where humans really are well ahead, is social learning. In other words, sort of teaching and learning. Humans are just streets ahead on that, but not really significantly on other aspects of what we think of as intelligence. Quite interesting, so we can see this crazy cultural evolution that we're part of that's so much faster than biological evolution, clearly. Anyway, staying on topic, why practice? I'm going to start with a little passage here from one of my favorite books of all time, The Prophet, Khalil Gibran. I'm sure you'll all know it. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? So we get fired by our sorrows, our losses, our grievous disappointments. They are what make us. They what expand us so we can hold more. Hold more what? Hold more suffering, hold more joy, hold more capacity for others in our hearts, become less contracted, straightened, narrowed, grow. This practice is surely about growth. If it's not about growth, don't do it. We're here to grow. I mean, here in this retreat, here in this practice, perhaps here on this earth, to grow. You know, we probably, most of us commonly think kind of we're here to sort of try to get what we want. But what if that's wrong? I could just read nothing but this book and it would be a far finer talk. But I'm in a lineage, I'm in a tradition, and that's not how we do it. So I'm going to have to turn to some other things. Here, related is more from Soko Morinaga's book, Novice to Master, an ongoing lesson in the extent of my own stupidity. I want to read this scene where he's been with his master for some years, and he gets summoned one day. Actually, I'm sorry, he'd only been there over a year. When Roshi said to me one day, "It is necessary for human beings, especially those who become priests, to have contact with other people. You must not live in isolation. You must form plenty of relationships. While it is, in a sense, sufficient for a disciple to practice alone under one teacher, for the purpose of forming social ties with others, you must go to a training hall. There are two types of Zen temples. Monks generally live in one type as novices until they graduate from the university. So they could be in a monastery and a college at the same time. Once graduated, young monks gather in a professional monastery in order to carry on intensive zazen practice. It was decided that I would enter Daitokuji monastery for this latter type of training. A monk takes with him to the training hall, the professional training hall, a sort of box to carry his robes in. It is traditionally a frugal affair made of thick paper hardened by lacquer, about a size larger than a book satchel. Bowls and chopsticks for eating, a razor and sharpening stone for shaving the head, sutra books, underclothes, and a raincoat are packed into two bundles and tied up with string, so that the monk can carry all his worldly belongings on his back. He tucks up his robes at the waist, wraps his legs in gaiters, ties up his straw sandals, dons a wicker hat, and sets out for the monastery. I was preparing my robe box when Roshi came into the room and asked, "How is it going? Have you tied up your box yet?" No, not yet. That is what I was just about to do. Well, it's good timing then, Roshi said. Bring the lid of your box with you and come into my room. Wondering what he had in mind, I carried the lid into his room. The Roshi took the lid from me and pasted 3 1,000 yen notes to its underside. Do you understand the meaning of this? He asked me. After he had done this, "Is it pocket money?" I started to ask, but checked myself before the words were out, knowing that I would be yelled at if I said something clumsy. Um, um, yeah, I thought he might be sending me off with some funds for personal expenses. Contrary to my expectations, however, he informed me this is nirvana money. The figure of Shakyamuni Buddha lying on his side to die is known as the nirvana figure. You're heading out now for the training hall where you will lay down your life. If fortune goes against you, you'll fall out and die by the wayside during training. So that you don't become a burden to anybody, this money is for the disposal of your corpse. Roshi was ordinarily very stern and didn't indulge in jokes. To hear him say with that solemn face, "This money is for the disposal of your corpse," sent a shudder down my spine. With renewed determination, I vowed to myself, I will do it. I had thought about death before, when I was a student departing for the war. However, the death implied in Roshi's words, "This money is for the disposal of your corpse," had a completely different meaning. It was not the death of the physical body to which he referred, but the death of my own ego. No matter how cleverly we might manipulate ideas, coming right down to it, our real motive is to pamper our own precious selves. Unless we practice to overcome the obstinate attachment to looking out for our own dear person first, we cannot open our mind's eye. This is how the Roshi's words struck me. I felt his words about disposing of my body as a spur in my side. The next morning, when it was still dark, I went to his room to bid him a formal farewell, and then let myself out the back door and stepped down onto the earthen floor at the entranceway. But when I reached for my straw sandals, I heard Roshi come out behind me. And he stepped down onto the dirt floor, squatted at my feet, and made to tie the strings on my sandals. Embarrassed, I drew my foot back and protested. "No, that's all right. I'll do it myself." "Here, give me your foot," he urged, pulling my leg towards him. After he had tied the strings on my sandals, he tapped his fingers on the knots and said, "Do not thoughtlessly untie these strings." Of course, once I reached the monastery and received permission to enter, I would untie the strings on these sandals. What he was saying, I understood, was not to ever lightly loosen the strings of the vow to practice. Yeah, it's the point of this practice. I mean, of course, we can do it for different reasons. We can do it for lesser reasons, so to speak. We can do it because we want some help in navigating the demands of our life. We don't particularly want to change our life, but we want some help. So, we'll try to eat well, try to exercise well, throw in some mindfulness, some meditation. Helps. Fine. If that's perfectly legitimate. The reality is that it can offer far, far more than that. It's of course possible that while doing sort of a regimen of daily mindfulness, we might get some glimpses of some other order of things, but it's unlikely that they'll go very deep if we haven't come into the refuge under the shelter of a practice that has evolved, that has been passed on, that has done that remarkable human thing, that social learning thing of being passed on generation to generation, a practice that knows there are there's another order of things. There's a wider, deeper, greater, I don't know what to call it, order of things. So we're coming to Mu. Why Mu? Mu knows of this other order. And I want to just share some bits and pieces. Sitting with Mu, we can sometimes get this feeling. It's akin to really loving our sitting. It's almost a solemn thing. Sitting is almost hallowed. It can become like that for us. The sitting itself is time apart. It's precious. It's something already bigger than us. Sometimes it's a little like stepping into a great cathedral and sitting under its vaulted roof high above us. When we sit, we can touch something kind of sacred in ourselves, some part of us that is less entranced by the world of gain and pain. To sit with Mu can accentuate this. We pick up Mu, and somehow after a while, we may start to sense the lineage of sitters who have sat this way before us. We're becoming part of something greater. I mean, yeah, of course, we already are, but this little sound Mu carries a recognition of that. It is indeed a shelter. You know, we're we've been living out on the high seas, chasing what we think we need and want, buffeted about by storms. And then there's a harbor. There's actually a harbor. Practice. Practice is, can I call it, the pursuit of true well-being. Not chasing things. Putting our trust in something intrinsic. Mu recognizes that intrinsic thing, and that intrinsic thing recognizes somehow Mu. Mu is the shelter. You know, in our lineage, all teachers have a suffix to their teaching name, either hermitage or eaves is what the women have the suffix an, which means a hermitage. Men have the suffix eaves, like Eaves, you know, the eaves of a roof. In either, it's ken, actually. In either way, shelter. That if we're ready, if we're willing, come under the shelter, come into the harbor. We don't have to be out there chasing phantoms. Mu is also the great shelter. I'm going to read something else to you. Man, I think it's relevant. I hope it's relevant. I'm pretty sure it's relevant. It's about samadhi. See, Mu practice, you know, there's this sort of sequence in classic early Buddhism of factors of awakening, the first being mindfulness, sati. And the sort of sati produces an impulse to investigate experience. And so the second factor is curiosity, inquiry, investigation. comes out of mindfulness as we start to settle and experience the moment here and now, be able to return to it more easily and rest in it more readily, start to get more curious. What is this experience? That then produces more energy, determination, and sort of, desire really for practice. It's getting interesting. We want more of it. That in turn produces states of delight, rapture. They then produce calm, a beautiful flavor of, I sometimes think, like a balm all through us, a real deep quiet. And that is the perfect producer of samadhi, what we call samadhi, commonly translated as concentration, but it's not really right. Our word concentration is, sort of focusing on something. This samadhi is different. It's a bringing together of all of us, sort of gathering together, wholeness. So now this is what I'm going to be reading about. Okay, so bear with me. Okay, I mean something. This is from Henry. Not from. So was the other little bit I read. I'll tell you, of course, if I don't say that I'm quoting somebody, I'm afraid it's probably from me. So it's out of the new book, actually. If you all think it's rubbish, I'll have to rethink the book, or at least this section. So regardless of tradition, all religions have discipline. The deeper you go in one, perhaps, the tighter the discipline. Most monastic institutions, for example, severely limit their members' freedoms. We lay practitioners shouldn't underestimate the demands made on devout members of religious institutions, especially monastic ones, nor how deeply their strictures can carve their shape into the human soul and shape them in more beautiful ways. There's an old analogy in Zen that the student is a piece of wood on a lathe being carved as they're turned, being carved by the teachings and maybe by the teacher. And that actually, when a student goes to another teacher, that other teacher can probably recognize the lathe work done by the prior one. One Zen elder brother of mine joined a monastery in Japan at the age of 18. And when he did, he was warned that here we live with 4 deficiencies: deficiency of food, deficiency of sleep, deficiency of comfort, physical comfort, and deficiency of human contact. He decided that he was going to do it anyway. And he told me once how much it meant to him the first time he found one of his washcloths had been laundered and folded by a fellow monk and left on his bunk. Just that one silent, half-secret touch of human kindness brought him to tears, even though he didn't know who had done it. Lay practitioners have more freedom and comfort than we may realize. We can pull on another blanket if we're cold at night. Turn up the thermostat. If we get up from a meal feeling hungry still, the fridge is there, quietly offering its reassuring hum in the kitchen. And if we didn't sleep well, perhaps we can fit in a nap sometime the next day. And we can always turn on Netflix or call a friend if we're feeling down or at a loose end. Imagine years without these little freedoms. Life as an austere round. It's true we are adaptive creatures and get used to things, but still, to learn to be okay with less of what we want, that is surely a good thing, a salutary thing, almost a matter of soul hygiene. As the waters of comfort withdraw, They lay bare the craggy rocks of our cravings more starkly. But for people on the journey to true freedom, that is a good thing. What is the purpose of these austerities? For sure, as above, to teach us how to be well with less. But also it's to provide outward conditions conducive to the development of unification of mind, of samadhi. And more than that, to make it easier to sustain samadhi once it is developing. All contemplative traditions seem to converge on one thing at least, that concentration or samadhi matters. When lay folks gather for a retreat, as we are doing these few days, it's just this kind of reduction in variety of experience that is so valuable. It is immensely something. It's immensely helpful. Our souls know it's good for us. They drink it in. They sigh a sigh of relief and feel cleansed and affirmed by the end, even if our minds may object and complain. But why samadhi? What exactly is samadhi? That's what we'll be exploring in this part of this book, and sort of on this retreat too. Some think of it as the last step before self-abandonment. It's like the last gas station before the freeway. It's the launch zone. This is where we wait, where we still get to be who we think we are. The fruit is still clinging to the old tree, but the juice within is sweetening and ripening, and one day it will be so full, so mature, so ready that it will drop from the tree all by itself. There are many images of transformation, of metamorphosis in practice. The caterpillar stops moving. It becomes still, and its skin can harden into the chrysalis. It doesn't know what it is waiting for, what must happen to it, but is compelled to be still. So we, at some point, have eaten enough of the fruits and nourishment of life and are ready to be still. What that stillness may produce, we don't really know. We have inklings, but perhaps whatever they represent is likely to be wrong anyway. It can't be like anything we imagine, because we can only imagine with the old mind, not the one to come. In a Chinese legend, carp are driven to swim upriver. There's a 3-tier waterfall. They must leap up 3 vertiginous falls in a row. Very few manage it. But the ones that do, when they flip up over the lip of the 3rd cataract, they turn into dragons, free to roam the sky. Samadhi is the waiting zone before awakening. It is a place where we come to a profound inner stillness. Something can transform here, can release, can unbind. It's like the stage of life in Hindu thought where we relinquish profession, family, mentoring that we may have done, and go into the forest to prepare to meet God. We settle under a tree and are still. Our soul knows something can happen. That's all it knows. And the mind by now has been humbled by life and is less domineering. It has enough experience now to trust the soul on this. It agrees, it complies. We sit still. Gradually we lose ourselves. Yes, in fits and starts, in samadhi. All the leaks in our being, in our awareness, are stopped. Our sluice gates are closed. The current of the river of our being becomes whole, silent, and strong. We are on the ultimate journey. That's samadhi. And yeah, that's mu practice. Just coming back again and again to mu. Seeing how much we are ready to not complain, not object. Just do it. Mu. Shall we have a little a little slogan? Just moo it. Just moo it. Whatever it is, just moo. It stops us. It can stop us in our tracks. Moo. In a blessed way. We may wrestle a bit, we may not like it. Moo. 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 So if mu is fructified by samadhi, if mu fertilizes samadhi, both are true. It happens through a kind of mindless repetition. Excuse me. Is there anything else to be said on the why at this point? I mean, I think well, so sort of for now, maybe I've said enough. Mu comes out of silence, and mu invites us back into its silence. So I want to invite you and encourage you to trust that more than the objections and complaints of the mind. Oh, maybe you're an uncomplaining kind of person and you don't complain. Fine, but mind will still, it's gonna object somewhat. It's used to having it all its own way, wander around just like it wants, And there's this, we're saying, no, just move. Come into this little tube of mu. Yes, narrow the range. Mu. I hope you'll maybe already be getting a little taste of the quiet in it, the stillness in it. Mu. Allow it to cast its spell. Allow it to help you. Let it be like a shawl that falls over you as you sit. Mu. Or let it be like that cathedral roof, vaulted ceiling, high above. Mu. Allow yourself to be in that rather austere beauty of the cathedral. Mu. Hear how the sound resonates through the vast cathedral. Mu. It's very, very big. It's much bigger than us. moo. Okay, okay, okay. Moo, moo, moo. Enjoy, enjoy. Sort of enjoy in this soul's way, deep enjoyment. Not the Netflix way, the moo way. Deep soul, wholesomeness, hygiene, a little bit of discipline, yes. Moo.